Hello, this is Jane Goodall. I'm really honored to have a chance to say a few words to you today. I've lived on planet Earth for almost 90 years, and during that time, I've seen many changes, including devastating changes affecting the environment. As a child, growing up in the UK, I spent hours in our garden watching the animals, birds, and insects. Now, 80 years later, due to the use of pesticides and herbicides, pollution, habitat destruction, and other harmful human activities, our garden has lost more than 1/3 of the bird species and well over 80% of insects. When I was young, you couldn't leave a window open at night if there was a light on, because almost instantly your room would be full of moths and other night insects. Now, I'm excited if one moth flies in. And as we're now aware, insects, and they form a major part of the diet of countless animals, are decreasing at an alarming rate worldwide. And this includes bees and other pollinators that we rely on to fertilize our crops. Sadly, we're in the midst of the 6th great extinction of plant and animal species, and this one caused by our activities, caused by our disrespect of nature, and the idea that there can be unlimited economic development on a planet with finite natural resources, which, in some places, are being used up at an unsustainable rate. We have to change the way we do things. It's really important to stress that loss of biodiversity is increasingly triggered by climate change. A major impact of climate change on biodiversity is the increase in the intensity and frequency of typhoons, flooding, periods of drought, heat waves, and wildfires. And this adds to the threats to biodiversity already caused by habitat destruction, pollution, ocean acidification, growth of human and livestock populations, and so on. In other words, slowing down climate change and protecting biodiversity go hand in hand. So many people have become disconnected from the natural world today. Young people are preoccupied with social media and video games, and parents with long work hours. And so modern life comes between us and nature, and what you don't know or understand, you're not prepared to protect or respect. It is our disrespect of the natural world that's led to climate change and biodiversity loss. It is so important to understand that we're part of the natural world, and we depend on it for clean air, water, food, everything. But what we depend on is healthy ecosystems. An ecosystem is made up of a complex and interdependent mix of plants and animals, each with a role to play. I see it as a beautiful living tapestry. Each time a species goes from that ecosystem, it's as though a thread is pulled from the tapestry, and if enough threads are pulled, the tapestry will hang in tatters, and the ecosystem will collapse. And that is happening already. So it's clearly of great importance that we work hard to protect existing intact ecosystems and restore those that are damaged. We must create a balance between present human need and protection of the environment for future generations. At the moment, we're so often using up nature's finite natural resources for immediate gain without thought of the future. Fortunately, there are many organizations today working on creating a more sustainable relationship with the natural world, and nature is amazingly resilient if we give her a chance. Places that have been utterly destroyed, such as an abandoned quarry or a terribly polluted river or lake, can, with time and some help, once again begin building up the diversity needed to make up a healthy ecosystem. It was in 1960 that I began my chimpanzee research in Tanzania. the Gombe National Park, where we are still studying the chimpanzees, was part of the great forest belt that stretched across equatorial Africa. 20 years later, Gombe was only a small island of forest surrounded by bare hills, more people living there than the land could support, cutting down trees to make land for growing crops or money from timber or charcoal. Poor communities struggling to survive. In 1994, I and my team initiated a really successful, really holistic, community-led conservation project known as Takari. This was in the villages around Gombe. We introduced agroforestry, water management programs, microfinance opportunities so that people could start their own small, environmentally sustainable businesses, and scholarships to give young people a chance of higher education. That program is now in villages throughout Chimpanzee Range in Tanzania, and people understand that protecting the forest isn't just for wildlife, but their own future. And so now trees have sprung up on the once bare hills. There was tree planting around the villages, but the rest of the trees have grown from the seeds lying dormant in the ground. And Takari is now in 6 other African countries where we work to conserve chimpanzees and their habitat. The resilience of nature is a real reason for hope. Once nature is respected and habitats are protected or restored, animals that were endangered can be given another chance. This was the case with the giant panda that's now taken off the endangered species list in China. And I hope the same will soon be true for the Chinese pangolin. I have a great love for these charming little animals, and all species are currently endangered by the idea that their scales have medicinal value. I'm encouraged by the growing number of rewilding programs, which are very successful in some countries, where large areas are being set aside for wildlife, and increasingly we realize the importance of green corridors linking protected areas, because these allow animals to move freely in search of food or mates. In some cases, animal species that have been extinct for years have been successfully reintroduced into these places. China is doing a great job in reducing pollution of air, water, and soil, and protecting and restoring the country's forests. And I love the Blue Sea Project that is protecting the so important wetlands and marine environments, combating illegal mining of sea sand and the dumping of waste. Another reason for hope is the energy and commitment of young people once they know the problems and are empowered to take action. Back in 1991, I found that young people even then were losing hope. Our future is being destroyed, they said. But I told them, there's a window of time to start healing the harm we've inflicted, but we must take action. Thus, my humanitarian and environmental program for young people, Roots and Shoots, was born. It's now in 68 countries, including China. It began in the late 1990s in China. Groups everywhere are planting trees, cleaning up beaches, looking after animals, raising awareness about environmental issues. They're making an impact in their communities and inspiring others to do the same, including their parents and grandparents, teachers and friends. And as we began Roots and Shoots over 30 years ago, many members have gone on to become leaders in protecting the environment and its wildlife. Another reason for hope is that more and more scientists are working to find technological solutions to enable us to live in greater harmony with nature. There are actually machines that suck CO2, carbon dioxide, from the atmosphere and safely store it. Given that slowing down climate change is helping species to survive, one important example is the increasing use of renewable energy from sun, wind, tide, and so on. I understand that China has committed to drastically increasing its solar power in order to curb air pollution, and that it leads the world in wind energy installations too. But let us not forget that it's equally important to protect the natural world, especially forests and the ocean, the two great lungs of the world that sequester CO2 from the atmosphere and give us oxygen. Safeguarding these natural carbon sinks from further damage is an important part of limiting climate change and thus protecting biodiversity. Also, it's urgent that each one of us plays a role in reversing loss of species and climate change. We must remember that each one of us has a role to play, that each one of us makes some impact on the planet every single day. So let's make ethical choices in what we buy, eat, and wear, how we interact with people, animals, and nature. And let's share stories of all the reasons why we can have hope that we can save the world if we take action. Because without hope, we fall into apathy and do nothing. And if this happens, we're doomed. Thank you.